All right, the 49ers are making some moves here as we approach the final preseason game. And of course, the cut to 53 men on Tuesday at 1 p.m. And earlier in the week, we saw some 49ers running backs go out for the season. And on Friday, it's Brian Robinson coming to the 49ers in a trade with the Washington Commanders for a sixth-round draft pick. So interestingly enough, the 49ers acquired a sixth-round pick in the 2026 draft when they traded away Jordan Mason to the Minnesota Vikings. And today they trade away that sixth-round pick. Don't know if it's the same sixth-round pick, if it's the 49ers pick, or whether it's the pick acquired by the Vikings. But basically, that's what we're looking at. And so I was a little bit surprised by this. I know Brian Robinson is easy to connect to the 49ers when he was with the Commanders, just because of the 49ers running back situation, A, and then B, of course, Adam Peters going from the 49ers to the Commanders. He's running that ship over there. So you knew that the lines of communication would be open. I think 49ers now are really in a good spot at the running back position. Christian McCaffrey has been healthy all summer. He looks good. Isaac Guerrero coming back from the shoulder injury, and he's looked good in a couple of practices that he's been on the field. And now the 49ers add Brian Robinson to the mix. 6'1", 228 pounds. So he's a big back, and he's been a starter for the Commanders. Last year was his best season. 187 carries, 799 yards, 8 touchdowns. And he also has the pass catching ability that Jordan Mason didn't have last year. His best year as a pass catcher was in 2023 when he had 36 catches for 368 yards and 4 touchdowns. So the one thing that I thought would prevent the 49ers from making this deal or getting too far down the road with this deal is his $3.4 million salary for this season. That's a lot of money for a backup running back. And in trading for him, the 49ers have him for just this one season. He's on an expiring contract. So a fourth-year pro, drafted players sign 4-year contracts, and this is the final year. And so, the first thing I kind of looked at was just, why would the Commanders get rid of Brian Robinson when he had such a good season last year? And I'll try to touch base with one of my colleagues in Washington and get the lowdown a little bit later. But, from everything I'm seeing, it's just because the Commanders had so many other players at that position that they really feel good about, that it made Brian Robinson expendable. Writing's been on the wall now for quite a while when they're holding him out of practice, they're holding him out of preseason games, because they just saw him as expendable, someone that they would try to trade. And if they couldn't trade him, they probably would have released him next week. And then, for the purpose of not paying that $3.4 million salary. So Adam Schefter was the first reported. I believe I've since confirmed that Brian Robinson coming to the 49ers for a 6th-round draft pick. So with the 49ers situation, Patrick Taylor out for the season with the fractured shoulder. He's already been placed on IR. Corey Kiner, the undrafted rookie from Cincinnati, who was very impressive during training camp, he has a high ankle sprain. The 49ers earlier this week waived him injured, and no team claimed him. And so that means he reverts back to the 49ers IR. So Corey Kiner is on injured reserve with the 49ers. I assume at some point a decision will be made as far as how long he would be out. That's a projection for the high ankle sprain. I'm thinking probably 6 weeks to 2 months, something right around that area. And then the 49ers are obligated to pay him each weekly salary that is associated with how long he's out. So they might end up paying him as a settlement 2 months salary because you can't just release an injured player. So the 49ers would have the option of bringing him back if they have that injury settlement, let's say for 2 months, and then they would be prevented from re-signing him until 3 weeks after that. So any team theoretically could sign him once the 49ers settle with him. But that door is open for Corey Kiner to return to the 49ers. Now, probably, as it looks like, maybe more next season, or maybe finishing this season on the practice squad, because right now the 49ers running back situation looks pretty well set. And it's kind of coincidental. Earlier in the day, really early in the morning, posted my 5 to watch for the 49ers in this game against the LA Chargers on Saturday night. And one of them was Jeff Wilson Jr., because with McCaffrey and Garindo, and then the injuries that I spoke of to Taylor and Kiner, the 49ers really don't have a number 3 running back. So the 2 guys who are in competition for that would be Jeff Wilson and also Keyshawn Vaughn. Well, now it's pretty much set in stone that number 3 running back is going to be Brian Robinson. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this. First off, let's start off with Garindo. I think Garindo is a good back. He showed it last year. He posted almost identical numbers to what Jordan Mason did. He also showed some headiness, if you will, some smarts, some football intelligence on a couple of plays where he could have scored touchdowns. One that comes to mind is that game against Seattle, where late in the game, in order to help run out the clock, he decided to slide inside the 5-yard line to avoid scoring the touchdown and giving the ball back to the opposition. So Garindo had a good rookie season. He also entered college as a wide receiver, so he has the pass catching skills as well. His problem has been he just hasn't been able to stay healthy at any level. You know, his years in college, he had a difficult time staying on the field. Of course, his rookie season, same thing. And then off in training camp here, he gets an injury, a shoulder injury during a special teams drill. So Isaac Garindo now, not so much the just rubber stamped backup running back. With Brian Robinson coming in, again, this is a guy who's done it. You know, he's had 3 really good seasons in the NFL, 41 games for the Commanders over those 3 seasons, 37 starts. I mentioned, you know, the stats he piled up last year, including those 8 rushing touchdowns. He's a guy who's a really good player. And he, I guess, in essence, kind of takes the place of Jordan Mason. Just to refresh your memory, because I've gotten a lot of questions or comments about why did the 49ers get rid of Jordan Mason? Well, Jordan Mason was signed as an undrafted rookie. And so unlike drafted rookies who signed 4-year contracts, undrafted rookies signed 3-year contracts. So at the end of his 3rd season, this last year, Mason was a restricted free agent. And in order for the 49ers to retain his rights, they had to put a tender on him at different levels of draft pick compensation. So the 49ers opted to put a 2nd-round tender on him, which was $5.3 million. Now, I think everybody could tell that where the 49ers were as far as cutting salary cap costs for the future, they probably weren't going to keep him at $5.3 million. But that did maintain their ability to have his rights, or to control his rights. So therefore, they used that as kind of the leverage in order to trade him to Minnesota for that 6th-round pick that I spoke about, that 6th-round pick that appears to be going to Washington now in the trade for Brian Robinson. So once Minnesota had him, or at least they were talking, Jordan Mason and his representation probably figured that, instead of playing on the $5.3 million contract, it's still a really good contract. They signed a 2-year deal with Minnesota, 2 years, $10.5 million. So basically the same average salary. And in this case, with this 2-year contract, $7.23 million of it was fully guaranteed. So Mason, coming off a season with the 49ers where he was their leading rusher, he rushed for 789 yards. He had 3 touchdowns, but only had the 11 catches for 91 yards. So that's where the 49ers really lost out on, so many ways that, they were kind of crippled offensively by not having Christian McCaffrey, but the pass catching part of it, a huge thing. Jordan Mason I know he tried to work on it, got the jugs gun and tried to work on being a receiver out of the backfield, but it just never clicked with him for the 49ers. But Brian Robinson, more in the 49ers mold as far as a guy who can be a pass catching threat. And what I think this also shows is a willingness for the 49ers to finally kind of put their money where their mouth is as far as limiting Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey, the NFL Offensive Player of the Year in 2023, when he was doing everything, he rarely came off the field. 49ers realize that they have to keep Christian McCaffrey in one piece. They have to keep him healthy, upright, and throughout the entire season. In fact, Bobby Turner, the 49ers running backs coach, recently told me that he doesn't know how they're going to split up the carries. This was obviously before Robinson came to the table here. But he said, we don't know how we're going to split up the carries, but we do know that the best chance of winning a Super Bowl is to have Christian McCaffrey out there that Sunday in February at Levi Stadium. Of course, a long, long way to go for the 49ers to get to the Super Bowl. They have to, with a 17-game schedule, they have to win 7 games probably to make it, or 10 games to make it to the postseason, and then, win 2 or 3 more games to get into that Super Bowl. But he said, what Bobby Turner said is that he is fully confident the 49ers can win a Super Bowl, but they probably need Christian McCaffrey out there in order to do it. So Brian Robinson comes in. Be interesting to see how the 49ers decide to work those running backs. If they give Robinson, specific series every game, or if they mix and match with this. But it's very clear they did not bring in Brian Robinson to just sit around and be somebody that only goes in when Christian McCaffrey raises his hand. That's probably something the 49ers really have to put an emphasis on, is to be proactive, giving Christian McCaffrey his breaks. He doesn't like to come off the field, but it's in the best interest of the 49ers if he does come off the field for periodic rests. And now with a guy like Brian Robinson, it sets up well for just that. So I haven't heard anything. I'm posting this right after the news breaks. I got confirmation. So don't know if the 49ers have tried to work out any kind of contract with Brian Robinson. I would assume not, as he's set to enter the final year of his contract. And again, that contract pays him $3.4 million for this year. And the 49ers in a much better position right now at the running back spot after the injuries to Taylor and injuries to Kiner. So when it looked like those were injuries that would really impact this team, I guess you could make the argument that it actually was a blessing as far as the 53-man roster goes, because I don't know that they bring in Brian Robinson without those injuries to Patrick Taylor and to Corey Kiner. So that's the quick rundown on this Friday as the 49ers set to kick off their final preseason game on Saturday night. And I doubt that Brian Robinson will be in uniform because he hasn't done much work, as I understand, with the Commanders this summer. So that's something where they're really going to have to bring him along, make sure his conditioning is right, make sure he's in game shape before allowing him to see the field. So that's the story with the 49ers edition of Brian Robinson. Thanks for watching this video, and that is it for now.